We're coming to you tonight from Morrison Park in Helena, which is hosting this C-47 cargo plane behind me, affectionately known as Miss Montana, which on this day 75 years ago transported 15 smoke jumpers to battle the fast-moving flames from the lightning-sparked Mann Gulch Fire in the Gates of the Mountains wilderness area. And when it was all said and done, 13 people died in that fire. A series of events have been taking place both in Helena and at the site of the tragedy to mark this 75th anniversary, and family members of the men who died have also gathered to remember. MTN's Marion Davidson had a chance to speak to some of them.
The scars some wildfires leave behind go beyond what you can see on the landscape. The Dietert family knows that well.
I don't want anybody to have an August 5th. The impact on the families is devastating.
Eldon was one of 13 smoke jumpers who died in the Mann Gulch Fire on August 5th, 1949. It was his 19th birthday.
He was enthusiastic about everything he was doing.
Although they never met him, Carol, Scott, and Bruce say their Uncle Eldon was a presence in their lives. As children, they visited his grave in Missoula. They knew he died in a fire, but they didn't know much more. It was too painful for their family to talk about. Carol learned the details in Norman McLean's book, Young Men and Fire, and she learned more when cleaning out her grandparents' house after the death of her grandfather.
And on the very back of one of the shelves was a box titled Mann Gulch. And that's where we found all of the mementos of Mann Gulch.
Photos of Eldon and his fellow smoke jumpers, negatives of pictures Eldon shot, letters, notes, newspaper clippings, and items from Eldon's memorial service. Snapshots of a life cut short.
I wish that families would talk about this a little more and history wouldn't be lost between families when tragedy happens.
Eldon's family works to keep his memory alive today. Carol and Scott have walked in his last footsteps. Bruce will join them this year to hike Mann Gulch. And they think of Eldon as fires burn across the West each year.
I always think about the firefighters, keep them in our prayers.
Eldon's memory also lives on in how fires are fought today.
He ended up saving a lot of lives throughout the years because of what was learned at Mann Gulch.
According to the National Wildfire Coordinating Group, the Mann Gulch Fire generated interest in the science of fire behavior, which led to the development of the Missoula Fire Sciences Laboratory. The tragedy also influenced the 10 standard firefighting orders, a set of best practices wildland firefighters use to stay safe today. The legacy of 13 lives lost 75 years ago today. In Helena, Marion Davidson, MTN News.
Dave Turner is a Mann Gulch historian and a retired longtime Forest Service employee. When he hired on with the agency in 1975, he was the fire guard at the Merriweather picnic area, the same position Jim Harrison held when he died in the fire in 1949. And ironically, just a year before the fire, Harrison had been a smoke jumper. He left that position at the urging of his family, who feared for his safety. Harrison was among those who reported the fire when it broke out and didn't think twice when asked to help fight the Mann Gulch Fire.
He had that choice. His job was not to fight this fire. It was only to report that fire. But he willingly jumped right in. Again, his training as a smoke jumper the previous year, he had a kinship with those fellows.
Join us on Saturday night at 6 for a special Tragedy in the Wilderness, the Mann Gulch Fire. There will also be an encore presentation Sunday morning at 9:30 and Sunday night at 10:35. Well, today, August 5th, as we have said, 75 years ago on the Gates of the Mountains wilderness, just north of Helena, the Mann Gulch Fire burned thousands of acres, claiming 13 lives and changing the way the U.S. fought future wildfires. This morning at 10:30, the Helena community gathered at the south end of the tunnel that crosses under Lyndale Avenue for a ribbon-cutting ceremony, along with a visit from Miss Montana, honoring the Mann Gulch firefighters' sacrifice and recognizing its impact on fire in Montana. While the mural took months of work for the Helena artist, it was completed last Friday and was done just in time for community members to view and be reminded about all that was done this day to fight it for its anniversary. It's a piece that was welcomed to the city from generations, young and old, with open arms. Jodelle Travis, who grew up in Helena, traveled from Missoula for the ceremony for her father, who was a scout jumper in Missoula in the 50s, who was inspired by the smoke jumpers for the Mann Gulch Fire. And with a fire that meaningful to our history, Travis said that sharing that history through art around the city is something we need more of.
We always see the mountains off to the west and the north here and the Missouri. Newer generations, the young people, need to be constantly reminded this is what happened here, and it spawned some changes that you now benefit from. So yeah, I think it's important, and this is just one more thing to remind future generations that something really important happened. People lost their lives, that was tragic, but it benefited firefighting in years to come.